This isn't a self-help show. It's a soul remembering. I'm Cynthia Sharp, educator, trauma-informed practitioner, proud mom to a son with Down syndrome, and vice president of Additional Needs Incorporated. I created Down to Heal because too many of us are told to survive and never taught how to heal. This is where we change that. Every other week, I sit down with parents, practitioners, neurodivergent voices, and body-based wisdom keepers. We talk about what really heals: nervous system regulation, somatic truth, community care, and the stuff you don't hear in the mainstream. Because healing isn't talked down, it's shared, it's messy, it's sacred. If you've lived it, studied it, questioned it, or been broken by it, this is the space for you. Down to Heal is a space I wish I had, honest, whole, and held. We're not here to fix. We're here to feel, reflect, and rise together. Listen on Spotify or YouTube. Let's get down to heal. Some stories stop you in their tracks, not because they're easy, more so because they remind us how powerful love can be in the face of pain. My guest today didn't just teach special education, she lived it. She began as a teacher, ready to shape minds, and life had a different lesson planned. She followed her heart, adopted her student, and stepped into a journey that asked her to navigate the deep layers of trauma, advocacy, and unconditional love. Today we talk about what happens when the systems meant to support us fall short, and how one mother's journey through complex PTSD, community, and faith in healing can become a mirror for all of us, if we're willing to look. This is a story of fierce love, radical empathy, and the quiet strength that rises when we choose to keep showing up. It's raw, it's real, and it's the kind of wisdom you don't just hear, you feel. Hi, Beth. Welcome to Down to Heal. I met you at a legislative talk, and I listened to your story, and it compelled me to want to talk with you a little bit deeper and a little bit further on Down to Heal because we have so much in common. We were both teachers. We are both additional needs parents. And we are both in the nonprofit industry. So would you do me the honors and help the audience know who you are and what role and capacity you hold right now?
Sure. I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you so much, Cynthia. I'm Beth Hatch. I am CEO of 𝐸𝐸 Collier. 𝐸𝐸 is a national alliance for mental illness. There's over 650 affiliates throughout the nation, but I oversee Collier County. I'm very honored to do so.
And you've made this very special in Collier County, really focused on the additional needs community. And, well, Down to Heal is focused on the additional needs community and beyond because of mental health and just overall well-being. You started your career as a special education teacher, right? And we have that so much in common. Can you share what drew you into that profession?
Absolutely. Always wanted to be a teacher. From the very start, all the dolls or stuffed animals, in front in the playroom, I was the teacher. But in my dad's side of the family, we had a he was in his late 30s. He lived with Down syndrome, and he stole my heart. He stole my heart. He lived in Pennsylvania. He didn't live where I live a few hours away. But every summer I couldn't wait to go see Augie. And he stole my heart. And from helping him with speech to, who's swimming the fastest in the pool, we just really, really clicked. And he was my inspiration to kind of want to do more. And so that was the beginning of my journey to the special needs world.
And the additional needs community has a way of just educating without sitting us down and educating. So what did you take away from that relationship, if I may ask?
I think every time that there was a win or there was a smile from ear to ear, it was a win for both of us. We both felt good. I think it's the simpleness of, if I just made a word, but of life, because life is hard. Life is hard. And I think if we look at it at a different way, those additional needs become additional strengths and things that shine through each of them. And I think that's what really always put myself in my position to look at the strengths of every child that was ever in my classroom. They all have something to give, and you need to focus on that and work from there.
Amen. I absolutely agree. So you had a special someone who you fell in love with in your classroom. Tell me about that.
So it wasn't the first day of school. It was October 10th. And the front office brought this little guy into my classroom, and it was a pre-K, varying exceptionalities. Back in the day, that's what they called it, classroom. And so the children could be ages from 3 to 5. And they carried him in. And on the second day, when I brought my at-home scale to the classroom, he was 12 pounds. He was 12 pounds at 3 years old. So I really, truly thought, what am I going to do with him? What am I truly going to do with him? He couldn't sit without support. He couldn't walk. He was truly an infant. I mean, there's babies born at 10, right? And I was always up for the challenge, but I was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? But he had this smile about him. And so kind of life went on, and realized really, really quickly that he had a lot going on, and he was very, very involved, and a lot of medical stuff involved, but never, ever did I ever imagine that I would be eventually bringing him home.
So what catapulted the decision to adopt? That was a big one.
That was a huge one. So, he had the first 3 years of life that was, that you wouldn't really truly wish on anyone. He was in his third home by 3 years old, and physical abuse, neglect, I could go on and on and on. The podcast isn't long enough. So, but just a lot of malnutrition. That's where the 12 pounds came in. He was a failure to thrive, which we figured that out soon after doctor's appointments. But he came into my classroom in October, and in December, he was taken away from his that current foster home. And it was right before Christmas, and the Department of Children and Families came into my classroom, and I said, "Where are you taking him?" And I'll never forget her face, and I know they're overworked, but she said, "Like I know, a week before Christmas." And my heart just went, will I see him again? Is he coming back after Christmas break? The whole 9 yards. So I wrote down my name and number and gave it to her. And then I thought that was it. And she told me to pack up all his stuff. So I thought that was really, and my assistant and I, and luckily it was nap time, so the rest of the kiddos were sleeping, but my assistant and I were just bawling, like, where's he going? And so 2 days later, a woman called me, and she was temporarily had him. And she said, "I hear you're his teacher and you want to bring him gifts." And I was like, oh, okay. So I went to see him, and she said, "I can only keep him for so long." And I said, okay. I said, well, hopefully, they'll figure this out, da, da, da. And I had gone away after the holiday. And at that time, we all had answer machines and not cell phones and all that, and all the voice messages. So when I got home, I had 11 messages from the Department of Children and Families, and my heart sank because I said, oh goodness, something happened. I called him back, and they said, Miss Hatch, we checked you out. And I said, excuse me? What do you mean you checked me out? And they said, would you be willing to take him? And I was like, what? And I said, I wasn't a foster parent. I didn't go through any training. But they said, you're, a special needs teacher, and he has obviously a lot of needs, and we need someone like yourself. So at that point, I was only about 6 or 7 years into teaching. And so I had to go to my principal at that time. And I said, I can't do this, right? Like somewhere in that contract I didn't read, you can't do this. And my principal at that time, who is still a dear friend to me, he said, of course you can. So there was a reason. And so I had contacted them and said, I will, I'll take him for, until you find someone at that point. And of course, my family and all my close friends were a little overwhelmed for me. What are you doing? This is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to take lesson plans home, not children. And then the rest was history. It became a very long battle. We went to St. Pete, and the gastroenterologist at that time gave him a 10% chance to survive. And so it was really that turning point for me, that where I took a lot more home than lesson plans, that he needed someone to fight for him. And so the journey began. And 2.5 years later, he was adopted, and he was fully mine. A very long process that I wouldn't wish on anyone. It was one of the hardest processes I've ever gone through. But someone needed to advocate for him. Someone needed to be a voice for him. And so I guess that person was me. I truly believe that there's always a reason. And of course, my family was the first to spoil him, and the rest is history. He's 27, and he was 3 years old when he came into our lives on October 10th. So we've had quite a journey, lots of ups and downs, as many with additional needs have. So I'm sure we'll cover more of that.
We have a lot in common in that regard, because I nearly considered fostering a child who was in my classroom. Her additional need was that her father, unfortunately, had terminated the mother's life.
Oh.
And so it was that segueing. She was just such a beautiful child, and I never understood until that moment why she had incontinence issues in class, and all of a sudden life made sense. And all I wanted to do was take her in and be like that safe, right, individual. So my heart goes out to you, and he is amazing, to witness. And he does have this electrifying magnetic smile that just pulls you in. So I can literally see why you were pulled in. So what was the most powerful lesson and moving from being a teacher to becoming a mother to your student did you learn?
I'll never forget. I can see everyone around the table to this day. I remember my first IEP meeting. I was one of those teachers who always put a picture of the student on the table in a frame, because we were not just talking goals and objectives. Our focus of that day was whoever we were, doing the IEP for. But that was just always and I always wanted to slow down the process. That process is so fast, and especially today. Really just make sure that those parents were heard and understood what this all was, because it's a foreign language. It's a bunch of 3-letter words, right? And really, how can they advocate for their child? That first day, when I had his IEP meeting and it was switched, it was a whole different ballgame. It was a whole different ballgame, because, of course, those goals were, educationally based and how to help him in school. But then I had the whole big picture now, and what he needed at home and in the evening. And we were doing all that because we were going to therapy 5 days a week immediately after school. And so, but it was that big picture. And all of a sudden I found myself, how fortunate I was to know what I could advocate for him and what more I could get for him. But it changed the perspective of how much more I thought I was doing for families, but how I had to do even more, because every individual child needs all the services that they can get. But I can just remember it just was a whole different feeling.
It is, because you step in and you see this whole table surrounded of all these professionals, and here you are, parent. And, I had my husband alongside me, but it still felt like a very vulnerable position versus that of authority of I know what I know. It's the uncertainty of I know my child. And fortunately, you were working with your child, which is different than being a parent, having a certain perspective of the child outside of the classroom. And really, as a teacher, they're different inside the classroom.
They are.
Because there's nothing that can like prepare you for life like the classroom. Like you have to integrate, you have to socialize, and those skills develop from so young. And a malnourished child, like there's so much underdevelopment in that regard to try to play catch up.
Yeah.
And 0 to 3 is such an impressive age. If you could like help another additional needs parent who's experiencing this right now, what, like a malnourished child or the ability to go ahead and go back in time, what would you say?
Find someone to find that mentor, find that friend, find that advocate to make sure that you're not alone in the process, because it can feel very alone. You're fighting for a huge fight, and you're a double voice. You're a double voice, and you have the school priorities and you have the home priorities. And for my son, his medical stuff at that time was such a priority. So for me, I actually had to take a seat back. Like, school's great, but we have to make sure that he's healthy in here, basically. So to help prioritize that, but also to have someone that was able to guide me, because I thought I knew the whole process, but how do we, is what I'm doing the right thing? Being able to talk about it with someone is incredibly important. We do that at NAMI now and really support parents. This is kind of the plan. This is what we think is best. And how can we work with the school? What's working at school that we can do at home, and vice versa when applicable. So really trying to find that support, because you can't do it alone. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first. And the power in numbers truly helps when possible.
So the double voice, did you mean like parent and advocate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
Just making sure that I'm
not a diagnosis. Yeah. Except on some days, probably.
So how did you navigate seeing him as a child versus a diagnosis?
We were getting a diagnosis, continually getting diagnosis, from every month, every year. He has a total of 33, complete total. And after a while, that can be debilitating. It can set you back when you've come so far. But he has I am very, very blessed to have such a spirited young little guy. And he's a young man now. But he's always been that way. And you always knew that, unless he was truly in pain from whatever he has. Crohn's disease is one of his main things, which can be so incredibly painful. He made it through 6 glaucoma surgeries, 2 at the same time. Oh my goodness. We lived in a cave for how long? Because he, couldn't have any light. There's so many things that he was just such a spirit, and always the good. He'd come out of surgeries, or he'd be in the hospital, and he was so polite. He would be thanking the nurses, and they're crying. He was just a little old man in that tiny little body. And I think he made each of us who love him kind of appreciate life a little bit more. So when we think we're having a bad day, we're not. He's joked many, many times. He's heard people say, "Oh, I have to have a colonoscopy." Well, what adult wants to prep for a colonoscopy, right? Well, he'll tell you, it's really not that bad. I've had 34. And all of a sudden, but he doesn't say it sarcastically. He'll say it with, "You got this." And you really can't complain after that.
That really puts it in perspective, right?
And so that's really probably what has gotten a lot of us through. He's even told my parents when they were in their, before their passing, and, "You got this. Be brave like me, Graham." Or it was very, very sweet.
So 33 different diagnoses. I remember receiving 2 that for me back to back was debilitating. Let's talk about complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Do you want to inform the audience like what CPTSD is?
Sure. I think in our world of additional needs, normally PTSD, most people know that. PTSD is more a newer concept, so to speak, but PTSD usually stems from, something that occurred, some type of deep trauma that occurred once, or, just a traumatic event. And CPTSD is that ongoing trauma. So getting another diagnosis and another, or fearing, will they get sick again or will they regress? That's all part of it. And in our world of children with additional needs, that's where we have to kind of really take a step back. And where, as I said before, make sure that we're taking care of ourselves, because for us to be there for our loved one can be a lot, because you go through almost like the whole grief cycle. And sometimes in families, it can break families apart. We've seen it all the time. Caregivers don't agree on treatments. Not my child. I don't want this happening to my child. Or you try. There's so many things along the way that we try, and it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because it doesn't work for everybody. It's just like a medicine. There's not a magic pill for everybody. Everybody needs something different. So that can be exhausting. It can be depressing. It can give you anxiety. It can throw your whole world upside down, truly. So having someone, being able to cope, having those resiliency methods to help ourselves first, and then help our loved one, because we have to remember that they're going through it too. And how does someone with additional needs, sometimes even with their intellectual capacity, how do they even understand it?
Right. Well said. Thank you. So are there any tips and tricks that you have come to use for yourself that really anchor you in the moments where, let's say, life happens?
That life does keep happening. And so it's that serenity prayer or whatever it may be, that, what can I control? What can I control? What do I have control over? What can I fix and what can I fix? Faith has been a big part for me. But my support system is what's got me through. And I realize, especially in my career, that not everyone has that support system. So I'm extremely, extremely blessed with my support system, whether it be family, close friends. I had Team Max around me the whole entire time. But that's also hard to do at times. I have a career of helping other people. So accepting help is also not as easy as it sounds. So having that support, and if you don't have it within your family or your close friends, finding somewhere that you can get that. We do groups at NAMI, and when new people come in, of course they're apprehensive. What am I doing? But every single time I facilitate one of the groups, within minutes of sitting around in that circle or however we're sitting, they're shaking their head because they can relate to someone else around that table. And so that's where it kind of clicks. And I'm not alone. Someone else has experienced this, or, this has been a win for them or not for them. Knowing and hearing those other alternatives and what other people have done and how they've gotten through. And then just taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself is probably the number one thing that, as a parent, as a caregiver, that we don't do.
Right, because we're typically pouring into our child.
We are. And I think about all the hundreds of hospital stays that I had. Those are just exhausting. You're sleeping in a chair or some hard couch, or if you're sleeping, because we all know you don't get rest in a hospital. And you're apprehensive of what that biopsy is going to say or what that diagnosis is going to be. So it is draining. But if you have the support, you have to take it and you have to accept it.
Very true. So when you talk about who you're servicing, right? And I love that you brought up, accepting help can be very challenging, especially when you're used to pouring it out, right? And I'm one to talk as I'm sitting here, and my husband can attest to that. Like, just allow me. Okay. What do you say to those who are challenged in their relationships?
Oh gosh, we see it all the time. We see it all the time that, and it's not just two parents. It's parents and grandparents. It's the whole family structure, because sometimes we have multi-generational families all living together or are trying to help, and then sometimes they're not necessarily doing their best. I think it's knowing you have to share yourself as the caregiver. You have to set boundaries also. You have to be able to set those boundaries of, yes, I need help, and yes, I need support. But this is what I'm able to do, and this is what I need help with. When there aren't those two people working together, really trying to, every family is so different. Every family is so different. Sometimes it's the acceptance part. Sometimes it's just, I can't do this anymore. I can't have the behavior I can't come after working and trying to support this family day after day after day and then come home and do this, right? I can't do it. Really trying to find that support, and if there is some type of respite that a person can get, whether it's going for a walk, doesn't have to be long term. You have to find something to be able to stop yourself and be able to be the best version of yourself for your loved one. And when there is division between relationships, you have to really dig deep too and say, someone still does have to be an advocate for this child and a voice for this child. And you hope that it's together. But we've also seen times where it's not, maybe they have grown apart, and maybe they are better apart sometimes, and they're better for the child. So we've seen it so many different angles, in different situations. But remembering that loved one needs that voice and care, and it's that long term. Everybody always thinks, well, what's going to happen? And as we get older and older, what's going to happen after me? That's another whole day. We hear that all the time. So the better that we can try to work together and have that support system, the better. But it does tear them up.
And that CPTSD wears and tears on us as caregivers.
100%.
And I remember when we were newly diagnosed with Down syndrome, going to Collier County Library System and picking up a DVD, and it was stress. It was, I can't remember who, it was like Scientific American or something like that. And it was just a documentary. And we're sitting there and we're watching it, and they're talking about how Down syndrome is a neurological, it's not just a chromosomal disorder, and a light just clicked. And then they went on to talk about caregiving and how caregiving can deplete 7 years. Now, I imagine it's more because of social media and the intensity of which we live from our lives, unless we do something about it.
Right.
That is astronomical.
It is.
So, knowing that we have the potential of having 85% decline of marriages, do you see the same in parental and like grandparent and parent relationships as well? Do you?
We do. And we have a lot of grandparents that are raising their grandchildren now. And we have a class that we do, and it's called pasta. We don't serve pasta, but we should probably. But it's parenting again the second time around. And one of the most important things with that is not to focus on your child, the adult child, and what went wrong with that. what didn't work with that, or what didn't work with their relationship, and why you have your grandchildren now, but more of what does your grandchild need. So that's kind of, we see that a lot. But with grandparents, we have grandparent groups, because they want to be able to help their children, but sometimes we overstep. It's did you read this article? I heard this from a friend, and and sometimes it's just overwhelming. Sometimes those relationships just need someone to listen. Just listen. I know someone, they're completely different. It's a grandma and a grandfather, and they're just, one is high strung and one is so calm as can be. And the high strung one is the one that's always giving, I spoke to this person and I read this and this is something new. And all that daughter really wants is to talk to dad and just hear dad just listen to her, whether it's to cry, to scream, to just listen. And sometimes that's so important. I think active listening for our support systems are so important, because sometimes we just need to talk it out. We need to talk it out, and sometimes there aren't all the answers there, but we just need to be heard and be able to let it out, because we hold it all in when we're with our loved ones.
Yes. And I love how you mentioned, like, even just going for a walk might do someone well. One of the things that I want to share, like from my own personal experience, that I remember going to Target, and my friend, who I call Granny Annie, came over to babysit for Jack, and I had like maybe 45 minutes, and it just didn't seem long enough, right? And the one thing, like, I wish I had known then that I know now is really savor that 45 minutes, because at least you get 45 minutes.
Right.
Any other? I love your serenity prayer, because that got me through like the first year with Jack. It does work.
It does. And, we have the world of social media and Google, and, and as helpful as it can be sometimes, it can also take us down the paths that just add more stress to us, because every circumstance is different, and our child's circumstance is our own. And yes, you can learn from some things, but it also can take us down that rabbit hole of never-ending stress and what ifs that sometimes will never even pertain to us. So I always say that, just please be careful plugging that in, and we're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. But we go to the immediate. And I think, I know one of the hardest things for me was throughout our journey is, the medical world, and my son has a lot of medical stuff. But you depend upon them. You depend upon them and their expertise, and that this is the right thing. So when it doesn't work, it becomes, it's even more of a letdown, and a disappointment, and grief happens all over again. That's where I was very, very blessed along the way to have an amazing pediatrician, and some people loved him and some people did not, but he was a true fighter for Max, and he got him to Boston Children's and Mayo in Minnesota, and because he always wanted someone to look at the whole Max, not just their specialty, because he was so complicated, and looking at the whole child, because the strengths, what have you. And I'll never forget, it really rang true. There was the pediatrician at Mayo in Minnesota said to Max, you are really complicated. He said, that's what my mom says. And he said, I just think your heart is too big. And his heart wasn't too big, but that was, of all the stuff, he was able to see that amongst everything. And I think we have to keep those strengths, and we have to focus on those, and look how far we've come at the hardest times.
So what do you say to people when they feel like the medical community is not supporting them? Because that is very typical as well, unfortunately, within the additional needs community. Because we lean hard.
We do lean hard. And I think that's where you have to be able to speak up, because you are that full-time doctor. You are that full-time teacher. You take that child home. And it's 365 days a year, 24/7. So those doctors and that medical team and those teachers and the IEP team, I'm grouping them all together because their intent is good. They have to listen. They have to listen to what the whole big picture. And so don't be afraid to share. At NAMI, we help families with medical binders, because sometimes you get in there and you don't even know where to begin. You don't even know where to begin. So really trying to help parents advocate for their child and like, okay, what is the focus of today? And write things down, all the things that we know, but we get in there and then we leave and we're like, what did they say? It's no different than a cancer diagnosis. What is the first thing that we ask someone with cancer? Who's going to your appointment with you? Well, for our additional needs children, we need someone all the time for that, because they could be whatever they're doing. Right. the appointment can be chaos, or what you heard, it can be so overwhelming. So what is the next step? Really just don't be afraid to advocate and be that voice and get another opinion if you need to. But know that it's not as quick as a certain pill or that certain treatment. It takes time, because everyone's so different and you can't give up.
So I'm going to put my practitioner hat on for just a moment.
Deal.
Because what you brought up is so true. And I think people take for granted like what's happening in their physiological bodies, right? When we're stressed, that frontal lobe is disengaged. Yep. And that frontal lobe, that prefrontal cortex, whatever you want to call it, is our reasoning, is our problem solving, is our big focus system, right? And it helps us know things and be able to problem solve when we are presented with, bottom line, problems, right? And when we're getting a diagnosis or we're told we need to take a next step and we're not regulated, because let's be real, that can happen often.
Right.
That's where having someone being able to listen. Recently, I've had my husband, Doug, attend some pediatric appointments with me, and it was very interesting to have him have to re-engage. And he helped advocate for Jack in a way that I couldn't, even though I was doing well. I wasn't doing as well. And it was amazing once he stepped in. It was like, we're heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I had done the same thing also, because you get into, I think we get into a rut, so to speak. We get into that, and sometimes you need that other perspective. Like, Max had been doing infusion treatments for quite a while, and it felt like I was playing God. There's just no other way to say it. I mean, the list of things that could happen because of this medicine was overwhelming. It was like, what they say at the end of the commercial on TV. And I just didn't feel it was working. But what if I gave it another time? What if it's that unknown? We all need that crystal ball. But sometimes it takes someone else to be with you, and if you have that someone, then you're very, very blessed. And I was fortunate to have that also, because sometimes it's a different perspective. And then I think even for the medical person to know, they have some backup too. I think that's incredibly important.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that you had mentioned, even including the IEP process, one of our first IEPs, I remember it was like transitioning from Head Start into like kindergarten, and they were adamant because of certain behaviors that we were experiencing with Jack at school that he needed to go into a certain environment. And I remember looking at the lead of the IEP meeting at that time, and I just looked at her, and thank God I was a teacher, right? I said, his social emotional development is as important. And it was like, oh, and I want that so much for every parent to realize, like, the intellectual is great, but that's social emotional, and especially, let's be real, during this time, emotional intelligence is kind of going out the window. So it's going to be first and foremost, but maybe I'm speaking from my perspective. How about you share yours?
Oh, 1,000%. I mean, no question. That is, I always said in all my years of even early learning, you can know all your letters and numbers and you can be smart as can be, but if you can't get your shovel back on the playground, the world's going to be hard. And it just keeps getting harder and harder. We have to have that social emotional experience. We have to have the tools in our toolbox. And with many children with additional needs, those aren't as easily applicable or just at a, it's harder for them many times. So what are things that we can do? And I think we don't have that book of parenting. We don't have that book of additional needs of these are all the things, and what works for one child doesn't work for another. But advocating and going off of the strengths and definitely going from there. And I think when I was a teacher and then into my career now is what works for your child and what are the things that you are worth fighting for. Sometimes parents want that, to be seen as everything's and what have you, and it's not. So, it's telling to a parent if they're tantruming, that's not the time. Let's just change the environment. We're not going to change Max or Jack. Let's change the environment and then let's change the environment for them so that we can move on to what we're doing, because we're not going to make any progress here. Just dropping down and to the floor and then making a scene. It's hard. There's so many families that just don't have the toolbox on how to do it. And I think teachers now are it's harder and harder because they're so busy, busier than ever. And they don't necessarily, all of them aren't able to help as maybe you and I would in the past and give those extra tips for home and so much. So again, like that's even what we do at NAMI when we're working with our families to really help them with like, here's things for your toolbox to try. And we model it for them. Oh, I can do that. And giving them the confidence to be, advocates for themselves and their child.
So I love that you shared that because there are so many things I could share from that. But how did being a teacher help you be a better parent? And what were some of the shortcomings for you? Because I know I had mine.
So even before I had Max, before I, took home more than lesson plans, I am very, still to this day, close to a family. And there was a beautiful girl. She's almost 30 now. And I met her when she was 2 years old, and she's on the spectrum. And this was pre-Max. So I used to travel with them. I used to take care of her. I used to pick her up. I used to take her to therapies. And I learned more with that family and being her caregiver than I did in any college class, in any internship, because that was at 24/7. That was at 365 days a year. And it was a family that fortunately was able to try everything. One day there was a hyperbaric chamber coming in the house and I was like, what are we doing? We're going to try this. Okay. The next time there was this therapy or whatever. And they were fortunately able to try all that stuff. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But being able to go to a wedding that was in the family and, they probably couldn't have done it if I wasn't traveling with them to help with her. It's that 24/7 where the sibling, smart as can be, no additional needs, but was getting migraines just because of the stress. Was developing so much stress and so much anxiety because of the days and the nights and the long nights and the long weekends, because his sister was a lot. Sister was a lot. So that was a huge eye-opening experience for me, even before getting Max, just as a teacher, that as a teacher, we have them for so many days, 180 days. Let's just be honest, 180 days. And there's so much more to them, and families have so much more that we just never know. And we deal with this now. We never know what someone is going through. And that gave me a much better inkling on what does go on, and who knew it probably helped. There's no doubt helped me from when I took Max home, and much more the lesson plans. I had some of those resources. But then I also think about all the families that don't have those resources. That's another topic and a question, I'm sure.
So I love that you mentioned also that teachers have a lot going on. When I taught, it was back in 95 to 2000. So that was like ancient in comparison. There was no constant cell phone. If a teacher needed us, it was via email, right? And we didn't get it until next day.
Right.
The constant demand on teachers is
so much,
way too much, that they're even getting PTSD, or I should say CPTSD, from the high demand and the need to know now.
Yes.
That also segues me into those are caregivers. How do we support them as additional needs parents when we're leaning on them hard?
We definitely are. And we have to remember that our child is one in that classroom of how many, and their plates are so full. And parents do, you were right on key. They want that immediate access, the being able to log into the system and see everything immediately. Their stress level, they need their own support group, truly. And we see that in the work that we do with teachers now at NAMI. I think it's remembering that your child is one, that they have many, and being realistic in our expectations, and being kind. Their days are, only 180 days with our loved ones, multiplied by however many. But I think, just like everything in the world, our world is so rushed, and kindness and listening doesn't exist anymore. It truly doesn't. So if we're kind to them, it's going to come back to us as that parent. And I think we just have to keep our expectations and know that our child is not the only one, and they're doing the best they can. And the more information that we can supply them with, the better. But also understanding that they're reading it. That doesn't mean there's going to be that immediate, because you could have 9 others that are saying the same thing. Letting them know that you're there. If you have any questions, that I'm involved, because you have others that are not involved. So there's that fine line that teachers deal with both sides. They have the very involved helicopter, as they say. Sometimes you can call them whatever you want. They're fighting for their loved one, or you have some that are not, and that can be just as stressful for that teacher, because there is no support for Johnny, so to speak.
Truly. So let's go back to the other question I had asked you. Where did teaching shortfall you as parent in your parenting role? All that we learned, yeah.
I think that all of the goals in the additional needs world are all posed towards school. And school is just a part of their day. And so I think it allowed me to realize how much more becoming a parent that needs to happen. But how do you do that? in a school environment with educational goals, but knowing that there is so much, and not every parent and not every child can go to therapy every day like I brought Max or you brought Jake, right? And not everybody can do that to get those needs met, and that early intervention, all that's needed and makes a difference. But that fine line of, I hope in the past as a teacher, I don't think I did necessarily, but you are focused on all that school stuff. And for a parent, there's so much more to that. So, it was a full plate, full forward as a becoming a parent of someone, and that was a huge realization. Well, we're missing a boat on a lot of needs that this family really, really needs. And educational goals are wonderful, but what is the big picture? That social emotional part is so important. The day-to-day routines, that independent functioning, that's all pretty key.
So I happened to be in a meeting with the district last week. And one of the things that they mentioned is that they're they're dealing with a lot of behaviors in the kindergartners that are coming in. And that they're not meeting like expectations coming into kindergarten. Like kindergarten.
That is correct.
So social media, being on that phone, isn't helping either parent or child, because then that's taking time away. Are you seeing this as well?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm interrupting you. Yes.
Besides, like going ahead and saying, put down the phone, what do you recommend?
So we do resiliency sessions at NAMI with our families, and I've said this many times. Saddens me a little bit that we've had to make programs or classes or nightly things that give parents the ability to say, I'm in charge and I can put it down or go to bed or what have you. Perfect example of that is we do these 6-week sessions, and one of them was with a group of teens. And I'm going to go back to the kindergarten part, but it was with a group of teens, and the last night we do a family dinner. And you can call it the Peanuts, Thanksgiving dinner. You can call it whatever you want. But the goal is that everybody sits and everyone's talking to each other and there's no devices. And I was at one of them, and the mom said, I don't think her son was going to eat. And I said, that's okay. If he doesn't want to eat, but he does have to sit at the table. Okay, well, I don't think he'll definitely bring his phone. Well, he can't bring his phone. This is like the 6th week, like we've talked about this and da-da-da-da. And it took that evening reminding him, go put it in the basket, that she realized, wow, he could do it. And again, is it a bit sad that we've got to a point that this mom, very educated mom, needed to be said, you can do this. Boundaries, and how important sleep is, and that you need to be able to turn off your devices, and what your body does when you sleep, and it will get you ready for the next day. That we're trying to teach all that with all the children that we work with and the families. For kindergartners, we are seeing it in all our referrals. And those devices, Cynthia, I could spend a whole day on this. I use the example of going to the pediatrician's office. You and I'm not going to use I hate to use shots as an example because it's so controversy right now, but back in the day, we were going to get a shot. And we were scared, right? Our little ones were scared. And what did we say? You're going to be fine. You're going to get a sticker, a lollipop, or whatever, and you're going to be good, right? And what happened is that we took that in. We took that in and we listened and what have you. But today, we throw a device at them.
Yes, we put on a video.
We throw them an iPad, we give them a phone. So those coping mechanisms have been depleted, truly been depleted, because just as something as saying, I can do this, I can do the shot, I'm going to get a sticker, I'm going to get a lollipop, and that's going to be enough, and to be able to do it, but we've, going out to dinner and waiting and actually talking. We know adults can't even do it. It's not just children anymore. Adults aren't talking to each other. But that waiting, that immediate response, we are absolutely seeing where those behaviors are coming in. And it's when that child is tasked with something that they don't want to do necessarily, where we're seeing that, and they haven't had any consequences up until this time. So so teachers, yes, we are. That's why we have so many referrals.
We were standing out this morning in front of the bus stop, and it was the first time we had gotten there so early. So there was an influx of children there.
Mm-hmm.
Every single child, except for ours, was on their devices.
Right.
Incredible. Not talking to each other, because that was usually like the time that they would get in trouble right before.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I'm during the day, they're not able to have them out during school and stuff now. So we're making progress with that. But as families and as parents, we need to have those boundaries too. We need to set those boundaries. The fact that AI, led a young man to, death by suicide recently. I mean, it's inconceivable. We just have spent too much time on these, and we have to show them that there has to be some boundaries, and it's okay to make those boundaries.
I agree wholeheartedly. So, looking back, are there any tools from the classroom practices that you wish parents knew they could borrow?
What are those things that work in the classroom? What are those things that work in the classroom?
Consistency,
whether it's whatever it may be, let them know that. It's not your secret recipe inside the classroom. Let them have that at home. Have that at home, or find out and speak to them. What is so difficult? If someone's coming in so exhausted because they don't have a routine at night, what if we work together and talk together? Again, that's becoming harder and harder because of the caseloads. But what are the things that really work? And vice versa. Those parents may have some great ideas, and sometimes teachers, we get very rigid in our routines, especially in the younger years. There's so much pressure about what kindergarten is now, second grade from what it used to be. In the early learning years, when they're in pre-K, they shouldn't be walking with bubbles and hands behind their backs. They're not supposed to. They're supposed to be moving. They're not supposed to be sitting perfect in circle time. Sometimes those teachers learn those things that teachers need to adapt and learn also, of how to, and that's where that parent can come in. If he swings his legs, or he lays down, or if you just let him sit across the room, he will be much more engaged and listen than if you're telling him to crisscross applesauce 10 times. So it's giving those teachers those bag of tricks to know that it doesn't have to be this way anymore, that we can meet their needs and they can learn in different ways. And I think we've made a lot of progress on that, but we still have a few out there that are pretty in their way.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I remember when I was a first grade teacher, because I also taught ESOL, I had a little house that the kids could go, and I would say, go inside, be the big bad wolf, blow it all down, then come out and be a little pig. When you're all done. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, as a teacher, I remember not always being empathetic with parents, going, I don't know, like, why you're so stressed, but I was single at that time and without a child. And now I completely understand, going, oh, there's so much to it.
Right.
How has doing NAMI and also being a special ed teacher shaped how you parents?
Each one is individual because just like each child, they all have their strengths.
True.
And they all have their stressors also. They have this world 24/7. And there's a lot more to the picture that we necessarily don't see, especially in the beginning. We try to build relationships with our families, so there's that trust factor. I'm really proud of the children's program we have at NAMI because it has truly encompassed everything that I've gone through as a teacher, as a parent. It's the barriers that come up daily that we're not even aware of. I know I said in one of the sessions that you heard me one time, I had to stop working for about 1.5 years. And they said Max was terminal. Now, terminal is a place in the airport in our world because we got through that. But at that time, I wasn't working. The house was going to be in foreclosure. And I remember trying to go get help, financial help, just a little bit. Can we up the Social Security? Like just a little bit. and that was almost impossible. And my biggest fear was to come home from a hospital with him and not have a home to come home to. And we knew it wasn't forever, but just, unfortunately, again, I had that support system. When my friends did a GoFundMe, I put up a fight like no other, because I help everybody else. I can't accept this. Now, after you get through that and you see, okay, yeah, it saved our house and we had a house to come home to and we got through this. That's something that I'll never, ever, I'll be grateful for forever. But there's so many barriers that families hit in addition to the day-to-day routines. So we try to help them with that barriers. Right now we have a crisis with insurance and therapies being stopped immediately. And so, our child psychologist is trying to do our normal evaluations plus the recertifications because it's turned their world upside down to have therapy stop immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It's inconceivable. Yes, we need to make sure that things are done properly, but that is a total upheaval of everybody's routines and what works. So we really, in all of my advocacy and walls that I've hit, we really try to be that voice for that parent, that compass to say, we're with you. And we don't have a time limit. We're fortunate through fundraising, all of our services are no cost. And I pray that always has to be because we all know ourselves how rushed the world is. And so we help slow that down and try to be that extra, ear at the doctor's appointment, listening ear and advocacy at an IEP meeting, whatever it may be, disability application, insurance application. Sometimes I got denied, this is gone. You don't even know where to begin. We have so many families that come to us. And even as a team, sometimes we have to stop and say, okay, we have to prioritize this. And it's even hard for us. So when a family is so deep in it all, and for myself, I remember I'm just trying to keep him alive, terminal. No. We've gotten this far. That's not happening. We're going to fight this. And fortunately, we were very lucky that we did. But that's not always the case. And so giving them the support, staying with them. I was in a meeting recently and someone from an organization said, we're able to serve them and get them out in 8 months. And this is our new goal. And every part of my body just cringed because I said, well, what is that timeline? What is that timeline? Because it looks different for everybody. And so I'm fortunate that, and my team, of course, I had to remind them when I heard that is not how we operate. Because we are going to stay with them. We can scaffold up, scaffold down, because when life happens, we're going to be there for them because that's what so many people need. And I always say it's a Florida thing. We do have a lot more people here that don't have someone. unfortunately. So if we can be that someone, we can be that listening ear, that helping hand, that support group that they go to know that they're not alone, then that's what we do.
So let me ask this for anyone in a different area that doesn't have, that isn't in this area. Are all NAMIs like this?
No, and that's because of the amazing community that we are in. Although we have a long way to go with services, just as a whole, mental health, additional needs, doctors, still everything. We've made progress, but as you heard me say earlier, I had to travel to different states for so long. You have to do your research, but be careful on Google. But NAMIs, we're very different with our children's program, and that was because of grants and philanthropy and the need that we have here in our community. So yes, there's a part of me that would love to expand that, but the need here right now is so great. So we have to concentrate here right now.
What does resilience look like in this journey for you?
It's ever changing. I'm more cautious of, or more aware of knowing that I have to take care of myself. And that's probably part of getting older, him getting older. He turned 27. We have a joke. I can't say I'm 29 anymore, that sort of thing. It's that what comes next thing. But knowing that I do have to take care of myself to be able to be the best for him. So finding what I need to be the best version of me, and then also listening to him also. I think sometimes we all get into our routines and we don't listen to our own sometimes too. No matter if there's limited speech or not, sometimes we need to observe, and we need to have them be part of it as much as they can, and help them find something that gives them that peace too. What is that relaxation? What is it, that music? Whatever it is, make sure that they have that too, because as much as we need it, they need it. So make sure we're giving them the tools. And that has actually happened through the years with Max, where I had to do it all for him. We had push balls and everything in the past when he was little. Now he kind of knows, I'm going to go do this. Okay. All right. That's his way of chilling out. This weekend was all football, but that's okay. I don't think that was calming, but he enjoys that. So, but realizing that, what each of us needs to be the better, so we can be good together.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I so appreciate you coming on and joining us on Down to Heal.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to be here and being a voice for so many families.
Healing doesn't belong to one person. It belongs to all of us. It lives in how we care for ourselves and how we show up for each other. Thank you for joining us on Down to Heal, a space where we don't escape the mess. We meet it with heart, with courage, with curiosity. This podcast is part of a bigger movement, a remembering that healing is relational, that community is sacred medicine, and that we rise by tending to the roots, and that real change begins by tending to what's been ignored for too long. Through Synchronicity and Additional Needs Incorporated, I walk alongside parents, practitioners, and families navigating the spaces where the system falls short and where the soul steps in. If something in this episode spoke to you, let it ripple, share it, sit with it, or simply take a breath. And remember, you're not alone. Because this, it's not just personal. It's collective. It's cultural. It's generational. It's how we build a world that holds all of us. Until next time, stay rooted in truth, stay soft in your heart, and stay down to heal.